Only a couple of years ago, it looked like, under its relatively fresh-faced Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Ethiopia had finally reconciled with Eritrea. Abiy himself was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 for resolving a long-standing border conflict between the two countries, and a year later, Eritrean forces backed Abiy's federal forces in their war against regional militias in Tigray. Today, this has all changed. Ethiopia has accused Eritrea of secretly backing regional militias not only in Tigray, but also in Amhara, and the two countries look like they're on the cusp of war, with both sides apparently deploying troops to their side of the border. So in this video, we're going to explain what went wrong in Ethiopia-Eritrea relations, and why the two countries now look like they're edging towards a full-blown war. Sam Altman was ranked 7th on our list of the world's most influential people, so in the latest issue of our magazine, we discuss how he surged up the list, and why he could very plausibly tumble back into irrelevance all too quickly. That's just one of the 72 pages in the magazine, because as always, there's more to too long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. So, to understand quite how mad this story is, you need a bit of Ethiopian political history. In short, from the 1990s until 2018, Ethiopian politics was dominated by a group called the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, a militia that originally came from Tigray, one of the 12 ethnic regions in Ethiopia. Though Tigrayans only make up 6% of Ethiopia's population, the TPLF played a central role in ousting the Derg dictatorship that ruled Ethiopia from 1974 until about 1990, and emerged as the most impressive military force in the country afterwards, which is why they ended up dominating its politics. Now, the TPLF were definitely better than the Derg, which was one of the most brutal and repressive regimes the world has ever seen, but things weren't perfect. While economic growth was pretty solid, Ethiopia's elections were not considered free or fair by most of the international community, and the TPLF fought an extensive border war against Eritrea, led by authoritarian dictator Isaias Afwerki from 1998 to 2000. The TPLF were eventually ousted in 2018, when two of its former allies in the Ethiopian legislature essentially defected and threw their weight behind Abiy Ahmed, a self-styled reformer and vocal critic of the TPLF, who thus had enough support to become prime minister. Originally, the international community were infatuated with Abiy. He freed political prisoners, appointed women to half of all ministerial posts, and was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 for negotiating a formal peace with Eritrea, which had been technically at war with Ethiopia for more than a decade. In retrospect, however, the international community's adulation for Abiy looks premature and naive. Not only has Abiy overseen a period of democratic backsliding, imprisoning journalists and opposition leaders, his peace deal with Eritrea actually turned out to be more of a military alliance, and in November 2020, Abiy's federal forces and Eritrea ganged up on the TPLF and went to war against them in Tigray. Abiy's federal forces were also supported by another ethnic militia known as the Fano, based out of Ethiopia's Amhara region, who helped them oust the TPLF from western Tigray. The subsequent war, usually known as the Tigray War, lasted 2 years and was appallingly brutal. According to researchers from Ghent University, between 250 and 500,000 people were killed during the war, the vast majority being civilians. However, since then, relations between Abiy and Afwerki have deteriorated markedly, largely as a consequence of Abiy's relentless pursuit of port access. For context, Ethiopia is the world's largest landlocked country by population, and in the past year or so, Abiy has decided that he needs to fix this. This became really apparent in 2024, when Abiy did a deal with the de facto independent, but internationally unrecognized, state of Somaliland, granting Ethiopia access to the port of Berbera. Unsurprisingly, this went down terribly with Somalia, who accused Ethiopia of violating their territorial integrity, and Eritrea essentially sided with Somalia against Abiy. This apparently irked Abiy, who reacted by turning his attention to Eritrea's Assab port, giving way to some conspicuously irredentist rhetoric. In September, for instance, Abiy said that Ethiopia's loss of Red Sea access 3 decades ago, i.e. when Eritrea peacefully seceded from Ethiopia, was a mistake, and that would be, quote, corrected. The same month, the head of the Ethiopian Armed Forces said our population is now 130 million and will grow to 200 million in the next 25 years. How come the interests of 2 million people, i.e. Eritrea, override those of 200 million? Then in November, Ethiopia's ambassador to Kenya, talking about the Eritrean port city of Assab, said the question is not whether Assab is ours or not, but how do we get it back? Tensions have escalated even further in the past couple of weeks, because it looks like Afwerki has responded to this rhetoric and the prospect of a renewed conflict by buddying up with both the Fano and the TPLF, who also have their own outstanding grievances against the federal government. The Fano have been resisting Abey's attempts to fold them into Ethiopia's federal army since 2022, while the TPLF don't like Abey for obvious reasons, but were particularly upset by an announcement last month that parts of Western Tigray, still occupied by federal forces, would vote separately from the rest of the region at the upcoming elections. There have since been reports of troop buildups on both sides of the border, and last month, a few days after launching drone strikes on what looked like TPLF positions in Tigray, Ethiopia accused Eritrea of deploying troops inside Ethiopian territory, an allegation that was immediately denied by Eritrea. This mobilization has sparked some anxiety that the region could thus be headed back towards a full-on conflict in Tigray, albeit with Eritrea backing the TPLF this time, which could in turn open the door to renewed hostilities between federal forces and the Fano, who are also apparently being backed by Eritrea. This would be a pretty miserable outcome. The last war took an appalling humanitarian toll, and any return to war would probably spill out into the wider region, which is already struggling to cope with a web of various feuds, rivalries, and alliances. For example, neighbouring Sudan has been locked in a civil war since 2023, in which Eritrea supports the Sudanese army, as do Egypt and Saudi Arabia, while Ethiopia has largely aligned with the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, which is also backed by the United Arab Emirates, who Ethiopia's Abey is close to. Egypt itself has a deep friction with Ethiopia due to Ethiopia's damming of the Nile River, while Somalia was angered by Ethiopia's outreach to break away Somaliland. So these various disputes have contributed to the formation of an Egypt-Eritrea-Somalia axis. More generally, any war would occur within the context of widespread regional instability, not just in the Horn of Africa, but also in the Middle East and East Africa more widely. While we should stress here that a war isn't inevitable, and Ethiopia and Eritrea have found ways to de-escalate in the past, the troop build-ups do look ominous, and the various other conflicts kicking off across the world mean that the international community has less bandwidth to mediate at the moment. Now, if you're one to binge watch our videos, or in fact any news recently, it's very understandable that you might feel as though the world isn't super safe right now. You're probably doing all you can to at least feel in control of your online security. You're adding an extra 1 or capital letter to your passwords. But is that always enough? Well, luckily our sponsor this week, NordVPN, takes your safety seriously and expertly works to protect all of your data online. It's an unfortunate reality that online scams and phishing attacks are on the rise right now. With us getting bombarded with emails from our banks, social media accounts, and constant newsletters we forgot we even signed up to, it's easier than ever to click the wrong thing. But with NordVPN's certified anti-phishing tool, you don't need to worry about your online safety being compromised, as their Threat Protection Pro feature detects at least 85% of phishing websites, blocking millions of scams every single month. Even if one slipped through and you did reach a suspicious website, NordVPN's data encryption tools will protect against a number of other attacks, like malicious man-in-the-middle data breaches and intense DDoS attacks. And don't worry, if you're concerned about past sensitive information being compromised, NordVPN's dark web monitoring is always scanning for your details and passwords, and can actively notify you before you even notice. Their super handy NordPass feature will even upgrade those old passwords for you, and keep them all organized and safe in one place. NordVPN isn't just the fastest VPN on the planet, it's a much needed shield to protect you from all of the threats that exist online. So if cybersecurity is as important to you as it is to us, sign up to NordVPN today. Simply click the link in the description or go to nordvpn.com/TLDR, and not only will you get a massive discount, but you'll also get 4 extra months totally free. There's no better time to protect yourself, so once again, that's nordvpn.com/TLDR, and it's completely risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee.